Hey y'all. I just wanted to address something really quick because I'm noticing the conversation happen more and more often, and a whole bunch of stuff I'm witnessing that doesn't seem to really fit. So I just wanted to talk about it briefly. As many of you know, I follow the Lukumi tradition of Orisha worship, and that is often, you know, referred to under a myriad of names. Hey, Scotty, hey, Bo. And one of the things that I think is never really talked about in advance, kind of happens in the moment, is the relationship between a mentor and their apprentice, a teacher and a student, and or a godfather, a godmother, and a godchild. And excuse me, one of the effects of that is that sometimes in many instances we're dealing with grown other people and we're not dealing with children, which is where I don't kind of like the godparent, godchild, although many will correct and or state that in the tradition you are a godparent because you know more and or have experienced more, and the child, like the person is in a childlike state because they have not, as of that essence. So I get the equation, so to speak. But what I'm wanting to touch on briefly is the expectations and or etiquette in regards to the tradition specifically. And I'm only speaking from the Lukumi tradition. I can't speak of YTR, Yoruba, Ifa, Sheshe. I cannot speak to Palo Mayombe or any of the excuse me, Palo Ramas and their tradition. I'm assuming they're similar, but I cannot speak with authority on it as I am not in those traditions. But one of the things that I think is very funny is that people tend to have expectations of what they're going to learn and how they're going to learn it from an individual. And in an age of information, where so many things are found in books and or Google, so to speak, or the internet, it leaves people informed to a degree and then forming expectations based on that of what the knowledge actually is and or what the subject matter is and how it's applicable, but really doesn't leave the concept for that, which is why a lot of people in the priesthoods suggest that you learn hands-on with someone. Now, that being said, we know there are a myriad of charlatans out there, and charlatans that will take your coin and your hard-earned money and lead you astray for nothing else other than to pay their bills. But one of the things I think is very important is a funny thing, and I probably mentioned it before, is the relationship as it pertains to the person that you are choosing to guide you and or lead you. And I think that's very important. See, this is a choice you usually make. This is not a choice. Someone doesn't say, hey, I'm your godfather or godmother now, and that's it. There is a process by which you have a choice and you get to ask that individual's Orisha if you are going to be good in their hands and if they're going to be good for you. And hopefully that's the conversation that occurs at that time. But prior to, I always often wonder how people are really getting to know each other and what's that process like, especially when people start out as friends and equate. Didn't mean equate. People start out as friends and evolve, into a different relationship. And sometimes that's a really big deal breaker for people. Sometimes they start out as friends and they don't quite know how to transition into a godparent or mentor, apprentice status. And that's hard for some people. But I think if you know yourself and you know that you cannot enter that agreement or that position with someone that you view as friends because you have a different level of respect for them that won't surpass a certain area, then don't put yourself in that position. And although you trust them because you know them, that doesn't mean that they're the ones to guide you. just based on that. And again, you are placing yourself in a position to learn from someone. You're placing yourself in a position to take their word as relatively gold, or take their word with weight as it pertains to yourself and the guidance of your life and your direction spiritually. That's huge. And so for me, I think people need to be careful with their expectations and what they feel they have access to, and or the feeling of entitlement. Luckily, I have a mentor other than my godfather, who I look up to, by the name of Jonathan, who people either love or hate, as I tend to make friends with people like that. And one of his things is, I don't need to tell you anything. He'll tell you straight up, I don't need to teach you a goddamn thing. I have the information you want, and when I want to share it, you will learn it. Not because you asked, not because you showed up somewhere and you did something that I expected you to do and or asked you to do. That does not warrant me to give you that information. And he's absolutely right. And people don't have to like it, and they can get in their feelings about it. But the reality is that you are placing yourself in a position relative of apprenticeship, which means that your teacher and or your mentor gets to use to their best discretion what information to share to you, when and or how, and how much. And it doesn't mean that you get to choose that. You don't get to set the intention and or whatever the case may be of what that information is going to be and how it needs to be addressed to you. Do not come into these traditions feeling entitled to information. Do not think because you paid money for a ceremony and or that you put in some time at the occasional drumming and or the occasional ocha event where you plucked something and or helped cut something up and feed whatever, that you are entitled to anything. Hard stop. That doesn't mean that you continuously work and you don't see reciprocity. There needs to be reciprocity. There needs to be an exchange. So you should be learning and or advancing spiritually in your time with someone. And you should be gauging how they are teaching you, if they are teaching you, and what they're teaching you, and how it applies to yourself and your life. And look, proof will always be in the pudding. How you apply what you're taught in your daily life and what it does for you is going to be a big factor in determining what it is that you have in your relationship with your godparent or even future godparent, right? Because some people learn with people first before they even bring that coconut plate and candle and all that good stuff. So I think that I'm really trying to just wrap my head around people who feel the need to go on some of the sites and groups and or inbox various priests about specific information that they either have asked their godparent initially and have or haven't got the answer, and or want it from different people anyway. Here's where that's going to get you in trouble, especially in this tradition. A, you should not worry about learning too much too fast and learning from all these other people, because there's so many subdivisions of iles and lineages and stuff that happen with minor intricacies and how things are done and how things are performed and orders of things, that you need to learn from one person primarily first before you can even learn from all these other people. And you're going to get in trouble because you're going to always constantly be in doubt and or questioning, because you're going to hear a lot of different answers. So slow it the fuck down. Learn from one person. Centralize your learning to at least one place so you can gather your thoughts about that and where it works there and how it works there. And again, how it applies to you and your benefit. And then after you've reached a certain level of expertise and or knowledge, after perhaps corroborating some of the information with other members in your house, or paying attention and seeing how things worked out after certain things were prescribed and or done, and then gauge for yourself, okay, I have a good understanding of this thing. I wonder how other people think. You should never have so much information from 15 other sources before you've gotten it from your actual godparent that you chose, and or had an in-depth conversation with your godparent, and or were not encouraged even yet by them to learn from other people. Listen, I'm not saying every house allows you to learn elsewhere. A lot of houses do not. Part of that is because they want you to learn the way of the house. How are you going to learn C, D, E, F, G, and your ass is between A and B? And so again, they have to gauge where you're at and what you're ready for and how you're processing the information that's there. If you're reaching out to all these other people, you may not learn what you need to learn. You're going to be the jack of all trades, so to speak, and master of none. You're going to know all these little tidbits and not know how the fuck it really applies to anything that you're doing. I know people get mad when I cuss, but I'm a cusser. So y'all going to have to be okay with this. You can turn it off now if you're offended. But, it's just that. And I don't ever want to say that the uninitiated have no place, or that they're undermined or condescended and, less than. It's not the case. We were all at that point and place where we didn't know. We had to learn. But allow us to teach, allow us to guide a little bit before you start reaching to the whole gamut of other sources. I, for one, tend to kind of centralize it and ask my godkids or godchild to kind of, here's what we believe, this is what we do in our lineage, and if I don't know, I'll try to find you an answer. Or I'll say, hey, why don't you ask a few people and get back to me and we can discuss in detail. Right? Because sometimes the other ideas may or may not, coincide with what I believe, and or may totally counter it, and I may have a rebuttal of why that doesn't work or why that wouldn't work in our line or in our line of thinking even, right? So there's so much there that I think needs to be just thought of. And I'm putting this out there to the newbies, but I'm also putting this out there to the ordained, the priests who are initiated. I'm asking you to open up your minds and your heart and understand how easily information is available, and be prepared for some of these conversations, and be prepared to delve into some subjects partially within reason, with discretion, so that maybe your godkids don't feel like they have to go to everybody else because they're not learning. Don't get me wrong. There's some motherfuckers who want to learn everything. They want to fucking run before they crawl. And you get to check where that is and how you want to deal with that. But what I'm saying is that this is an exchange between the non-initiate and or the newly initiated and those who have some time in the game. Which is why I'm funny about anybody who is right out of Yaboraje who's crowning people. This is my opinion. Don't hate me because your life may be different and you may have been one of those people who crowned.
Time to leave.
What is that? Lies. Anyway, I do not believe anybody as a Yawo should be crowning people or right afterwards. I find it very, very odd because you haven't even been initiated to room yet, and or grasp what that means, and or worked outside of that initial presentation enough to get the hang of the room. This is my opinion. Do not take offense. I'm sure that there are odus and or lineage things that may change this fact. For me, I think your ass needs to stay Yawo for that year and 7. After that, we'll get you presented. And after that, we'll get you working in some ultra rooms. But I don't believe in that process right afterwards. There's always been a gestation period with our rituals. There's always been a handing off, and then a time to sit with it, a time to be heated and birthed and whatever, and then a time to cool off and settle the energy and settle, what the new place is before you step into, something officially. And that's seen and reflective within our ritual work. So naturally, it's reflected in our tradition and the culture therein. And so nothing can be rushed. I know how it is to be hungry and thirsty for knowledge and for all these, amazing things. And sometimes it feels like time is against you. I was there. I hated the fact that I found this when I was, in my 20s and not when I was a kid. I almost envy certain people that were, born into the tradition or raised within the tradition, because I feel like, oh my God, I got crowned at 27. And I feel like, oh my God, there's so much to learn. I wish I had a handle on all this. But I also have to look into the account that I have faith in our tradition, and I have faith in the process of tradition, which means I have to have faith in Ori, in where it guided me, where I met certain religions and traditions first before getting here, and that they added to me being me so that I can use these tools effectively in a way that I can, and only that I can, right? That I get to give to this tradition and through this tradition what only I can, according to my destiny, right? So I think that there's a time to release sometimes and slow the hell down. And even now in the tradition, as a crowned initiate, I'm only crowned 7 years. I'll be 8 in April. And to me, it's a big deal to sometimes stop, as thirsty as I am to learn about Ocha stuff, and get my head together and bring a level of balance. So I have to let things play out in my life, right? The Orisha ain't here to live my life for me. The Muertos and Egum, they're not here to live my life for me. I'm living this life. So I don't allow anything else to live that for me, which means I'm willing to fall on my ass. I'm willing to have a trial by error way in learning things for myself, even if it's the hard way, because I have an appreciation for the journey that I got to get that information and to learn that lesson. Okay? And one thing we'll always know, and we should always know, is that we're always a student. This whole life, we will always be a student. No matter how much we learn, we can always learn more. We can always learn different. And so I'm just putting that out there. I'm seeing a lot of people who are bringing up points like, oh, I have a Spanish or Latina godmother or godparent, and I'm African American, and I don't feel like they can connect with me culturally and really teach me. Well, then if you thought that, you didn't know that or think that in your time getting to know them as a priest, you just found that out right now? And or then why did you go into that whole process of bringing plate coconut candles and everything? You could have stood your ass on home and sat on down and waited for someone to come along, or networked with said person anyway, until you found someone who maybe you clicked with to teach you. Stuff like that. I don't know. If you were a woman who has trauma with men or bad experiences with men and you need a madrina, why would you have bought coconut and plates to a man to be your godfather? Figure out what works for you, give it time, get to know these people, and see where it goes. So, don't set yourself up for failure and then get mad at the world. That's just what I'm trying to say. And I'm hearing a lot of stuff like that. I feel like a lot of people are getting blamed. A lot of people are being blamed for things. And I think we have to take some responsibility in our actions, in our thought process, and how we choose and the choices we make and what brought us there, and all that good stuff. So anyway, I'm sure there's more to this, but I'm kind of sick, as you can tell. And I'm not trying to come down on anybody. This is not meant for one person in particular, so nobody get in their feelings, please. But I'm seeing a trend of things. People asking for a lot of information and or reading material outside of their godparents and or people that they've asked to be their godparents. And I find it a little odd. I find it, I guess, borderline disrespectful, depending on the tone and what's really happening behind the scenes, and all that good stuff. So, folks, as always, I try to encourage us to know better and then to do better. And that's all. That's what I'm trying to do. I hope that's what y'all trying to do. And that's that. I'm gonna get off this edgy uncle fingers.